This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 396 of the DCAU Review, an episode that shall live in infamy. No, I'm kidding. I'm Cal. I'm one of your hosts, and with me, as he always is my good friend and brother, Liam. Liam, we are hanging around here in the future.
The future, Cal?
That's right, Liam. The future, or 50 years from now, whatever now is. And of course, that means when we're hanging around in the future, when we've headed back to the future, if you will, we, of course, have to review. Have to is such a strong word. We're compelled to review the Zeta Project, just because we started this podcast and made the rules and now we can't change them. We must adhere to the rules that we made up on the spot when we came up with this podcast. And that means finishing every series, whether they are loosely or truly related to the DCAU. And that includes the Zeta Project. We got another double feature this week. We're scratching 2 more off the list, which means we only have 3 more episodes after this week. And we are starting off with a pair of episodes that both feature your favorite character in the Zeta Project, that being Bucky, in various roles. And we have a pair today that we will definitely discuss, as they are definitely episodes.
Absolutely, we do. We are going to be talking about the episodes On the Wire and Cabin Pressure, and some revelations are had. Some friends are captured. There's the stakes have never been higher. It's a low bar, but I guess factually speaking, the stakes in this show have never been higher.
That's right. We do learn a little bit more about one of our co-stars, the secret of her past, and how she came to be almost here. Well, we're introduced to her brother, at least, but we'll get into that in just a moment here when we kick off our first episode, which is On the Wire, which originally debuted on the Kids WB July the 20th, 2002. And this, of course, before we get to our review of this episode, we will, of course, get the official IMDb synopsis for the episode, which is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. That's right, the best way to support the podcast. If you want to encourage us to never, ever, ever record another episode discussing Zeta once we've completed the series, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and become a one-time supporter of the podcast. And let us know what you'd rather see than a Zeta Project follow-up. If there's anything else, like what would you rather do? Would you rather see paint dry? Would you rather watch or a video of someone scraping their nails on the chalkboard? What would you rather view than an episode of the Zeta Project? Let us know. Become a one-time supporter. Send your message over, and if you send one, the funniest one, we'll read it on the air next week or the next Zeta Project review. You can also become a monthly supporter of the podcast, potentially influencing. You know what? You want to hear a Zeta Project omnibus episode? Me neither. But maybe you want to hear something else as an omnibus episode. We invite you to head over and become a monthly supporter, maybe influence things a little bit more, and get some perks for your support of the podcast. We have 3 different levels to support the pod. Our top tier level is our super friend tier. That one allows you all of our perks and gets you the exclusive perk. You have the opportunity of asking a question, and we may in fact select your question to then read on the air and hear your question answered right here on the podcast. So whether you want to become a one-time supporter of the pod or a monthly supporter of the pod, we invite you to head on over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Please encourage us. We hate reviewing the Zeta Project.
And with that out of the way, this is the synopsis for our first of 2 episodes here today, On the Wire, which is written by Joseph Kerr, directed by Tim Maltby, with music by Michael McQuistion and animation by Soon Min. And that synopsis reads as such. Ro is reunited with her long-lost brother, whose boss recognizes her as being in cahoots with Zeta.
Not the worst one we've ever heard.
True. Yeah, not a lot of detail, but it works in a TV guide blurb sort of way. So yeah, let's get into it. I guess as the audience may know if they've listened to our Zeta reviews, since we double feature, we won't go into quite as much detail on the plot. And if we're honest, the plots just aren't interesting enough to go, minute by minute through, but we will do our best to recap the plot here.
Yes, we will digress. And as you pointed out before we went on the air, at least this episode features more than them just chasing a tornado around. Check that one out in the archives or don't at DCAUreview.com or on your favorite podcasting app. But yes, this episode opens up, as so many of these episodes do, with the NSA on Ro and Zeta's trail, and they are chasing them through a city. As Zeta and Ro are on a bike, they get a message from the aforementioned Bucky, who is piping in, not to offer them any help, but to share something else with them. They cut him off before he can share whatever it is, and they end up making their way through a perimeter of police officers, just enough to evade them, and head into what appears to be a convention center for a Pictos convention. And Pictos are comic books. They've just renamed them something futuristic sounding, I suppose. So we're at a Comic Con, and of course, there's a lot of people dressed up in comics, or in costume rather. So this seems to be a great opportunity for Zeta and Ro to hide out. They do disguise themselves as two prominent heroes that are pretty popular apparently, who are Dark Owl and Squirrel Girl. Not that one. But they're at a table signing autographs. Unfortunately, they must have forgotten about those very special binoculars that the NSA agents have that just see through the disguise, which other than like just because, why would Zeta ever change his appearance to try and blend in anywhere? Like, why wouldn't he just be in his humanoid appearance at all times, like the standard humanoid appearance? Because they're going to be able to find him with the binoculars anyway. I guess a quick glance, if their binoculars are down for some reason, they'll miss him. But not this time. Unfortunately for Zeta, he is spotted almost immediately by one of our agents. They chase him through. He's able to somehow evade them. Speaking of one of those moments where I guess the binoculars aren't working for some unknown reason, or maybe this agent doesn't have the special X-ray binoculars. She just has a pair of regular binoculars. Zeta and Ro are able to evade our NSA agents, at least initially. So then we see a Bucky return, congratulating them on being able to evade the NSA. And then, as a thank you for helping him out on several of our previous episodes, much to Liam's chagrin, he decides that he's going to even things out and help Ro out. He says that he's actually tracked down and found Ro's long lost brother, Casey, and decides to put them in touch. We learn that Casey is a journalist who is at least trying out for a vid news company as opposed to text news. There's two different newses in the future, vid news and text news. And the funniest line is, all the real reporting is in text news, as if text news will still be valid 50 years from now, whenever now is, as if people haven't completely moved on to video news. But sure, yeah, text news, sure, maybe it will be valid. Maybe it'll make a comeback in 50 years from now, whatever now is. But apparently in this universe it has, but he's trying out for the vid news, and we learned that Casey is his last name is McCurdy. And we'll talk about that perhaps in the plot later on. That name sounds familiar. So Casey McCurdy, he shares a heart-to-heart with Ro over VidPhone, shares some memories about what little he remembers about their parents and more about what their grandparents did and who they were. He mentions a nickname of Bulldozer that they their grandfather bestowed upon Ro. And as he's doing this VidPhone interview on work time, by the way, on work property, we see over his shoulder his boss recognizes, or is at least curious enough to try and search and find out who this person is that he recognizes on the other side of the vid screen. He recognizes Ro being a fugitive, and at this point he realizes that he's got to convince Casey to report them to the government. He also says that this will be a great story for him and a way for him to leverage this into a job, a full-time job at the Vid News. God, that's a terrible name. So he promises them a job if he decides to report them. So Casey is a little reluctant at first, decides he's going to meet with Roe in public. So they go to a extremely public place. Of course, Casey's boss doesn't trust that Roe's brother, or that Casey as Roe's brother is going to do the right thing, quote unquote, and turn Roe in. So he himself, I guess he just has Agent Bennett's phone number on speed dial. He dials up the NSA and Agent Bennett himself to report that Roe and Zeta are in the area. Meanwhile, Casey does meet with Roe out in a extremely public place. They get to know each other, and they decided they're going to jump on a hover trolley, which is a futuristic version of our trolley system in San Francisco, I suppose, complete with extremely steep and dipping streets. So we see them on a trolley. They're sharing some information. They're having some bonding time. And then who should show up but the NSA right alongside? They're going to board the trolley and attempt to make contact with and capture Roe and Zeta. Of course, the agents that jump on board, including Agent West, bungle everything. Agent West's one responsibility is to stop the trolley from moving forward. There's a robot who is operating it. He pulls the plug instead of pulling the brake, and this causes the trolley to spin out of control, barrel down the street, going out of control, headed towards another trolley. Everybody on board is jostled about, including our NSA agents. Thankfully, Zeta jumps into action here, runs up to the front. He hacks into the robot operator and is able to activate the brakes, allowing the trolley to stop just in the nick of time before it crashed into another trolley. This is the trolley problem, Zeta style, I guess. I wish somebody would have pulled the lever before I had to watch this episode, but that's neither here nor there. Yes, so Zeta and Roe are able to jump off and begin their escape, and Casey provides a little bit of a distraction by forcing everybody off of the trolley before the NSA agents. Those darn NSA agents, they were just foiled by like 8 people jumping in their way. They just couldn't figure out how to get around them in time to catch up with Roe and Zeta. So Roe and Zeta make their way out and disappear. And then we flash back to Casey headed back to work, but unfortunately he's met by a familiar face here with those really obscure dark green glasses that he seems to have pilfered from Weather Wizard.
That's right. So as we get the shaking out of the or the postmortem of the almost capture of Zeta and Roe, Casey returns to his office where he's sort of read the riot act by his boss for not having the killer instinct required for vid journalism, or vid news, as they keep saying. And obviously Agent Bennett appears as well and claims that sort of spins the tale that Zeta has been, as we know, which I'd forgotten the name of the group, but they still believe that he was brainwashed by this terrorist group he was supposed to infiltrate, and that they believe Roe is simply an innocent bystander, and that if Casey can help them capture Zeta, that that Bennett will release Roe into Casey's custody and they can go free. And the weirdest part about that is that it turns out at the end of the episode that was true, apparently. But we'll get to that in a moment here. So they make a decision. They tell Casey to get back in contact with Roe, though he is still reluctant. But we see as Roe and Zeta have escaped, they decide to contact Casey directly, and he asks to meet up on the Golden Gate Bridge. I guess they're in San Francisco. I don't know if they had mentioned that before, but they are. And so they decide to go meet him on the bridge. But as per Casey's suggestion, however, we reveal that Bennett and Casey's boss are still in the room, and that he is in fact helping them lay a trap. And lay a trap they do, seemingly, as when Zeta and Ro arrive, they take an elevator up to the top of the bridge where they're expecting to meet Casey. And Casey does appear. However, he is piloting a news hovercraft with his boss in tow. And we see that plenty of other law enforcement have surrounded the bridge, and Bennett walks out onto the bridge as well, pulling his laser blaster on Zeta and Ro, as Ro realizes that Casey has apparently set her and Zeta up. Casey is determined that he's going to make it in the news world after all, and he doesn't care what happens to Zeta, seemingly. However, at the last moment, he asks Ro to trust him and uses her childhood nickname of Bulldozer, which I guess is a signal for her to know that he's not actually double-crossing her. But as she gets on board, he begins to wildly swing the helicopter around, claiming that he's going to get a better shot of Zeta's capture. But really, he knocks Bennett over and sort of spins out wildly. Somehow, as you pointed out, Bennett survives this brush with a full-speed helicopter's landing gear smacking him in the back. But and right as agents West and Rush are appearing in their own helicopters, seemingly ready to take a shot at Zeta, who has begun running across the cables of the giant bridge, with Bennett in pursuit, slowly, however, because of course Bennett doesn't have magnet boots like Zeta does. But every time one of the other agents gets a shot at Zeta, Casey maneuvers his news hovercraft into their sight line, and causes them to allow Zeta to seemingly escape, or so they think he's about to escape. But then Bennett and the agents are able to get a little bit closer. The news chopper is damaged and begins plummeting towards the river below. So Zeta jumps off after them. We see the smoldering wreckage of the craft on the ground, and we see Casey and his boss, the only two apparent survivors, coming out of it. Bennett is at least smart enough to use the magic goggles they have, where they can see through Zeta's disguises to make sure, which is nice, because sometimes we have this technology in the show and they just forget to use it. But here he uses it to double check, and yes, in fact, it is Casey and Casey and his boss, who are walking out of the wreckage, seemingly forlorn, as his boss reads Casey the riot act. Casey says, "Well, everyone knows the real future is in text news, not in vid news." Sure. And Agent Bennett, despite the fact that he just with his own eyes saw Casey intervene with a dangerous, murderous fugitive, as far as they're concerned, he does not arrest Casey, and then simply tells him he'll be watching him. And we see in the background, as a fog has set in, that Zeta and Ro emerge from the water and sneak onto a police boat, which is apparently just floating in the water unattended. And they hop on board, and Zeta disguises himself as an agent and floats away on the boat. So that seems to be the end of our adventure, but we get a little postscript as Zeta and Ro are apparently taking a plane to their next destination, and Ro seemingly remembers something that Casey had told her and Zeta right before the copter crashed, that they should be checking out the print news going forward, or the text news going forward. And sure enough, Ro finds a coded message in the classifieds. Apparently, we still have classifieds 50 years from now, whenever now is. See, kids, when you wanted to sell something and Craigslist didn't exist, you had to pay a newspaper to tell the rest of the city or town you lived in that you were trying to sell it. Or what I assume that's all classifieds were used for. I'm not sure if they were making personal connections back then as well. But however, that was basic. So apparently those still exist. in 50 years from now, whenever now they are, but it's now an online system. And in fact, when she clicks the link, Ro receives a hidden message from Casey, uh, saying that he figured she would get his message eventually, and said that he'll keep in touch through the classifieds and the text news, and that he'll be passing on info about their parents as he finds it out. He'll do his best on his end to discover things. And then he gives them a sneak peek of his new article at his new news station that apparently he works for, that declares that Zeta is actually a hero and not the dangerous fugitive that the NSA claims. And that is where our first episode ends here.
Yeah. Like I said before we got started, as negative as I was being for comedic reasons, this episode is not, episode is definitely not the worst episode that we've ever reviewed. I think at least the thing that you can say about it is at least it moves the plot forward for our series. So we have Rose's story expanding a little bit. She gets this connection. She has maybe a little bit closer to finding out about her parents. She now has another member of her family that she can reach out to, or potentially is on her side, another ally, if you will, there to help her out. So sure, yeah, okay, we have something here, and at least it's somewhat interesting in that this I guess the twist is supposed to be like you're not sure what side her brother is on or not because of the way that he seemingly gives them up at the end there, even though it's very obvious that he's being made to do this from the phone call with
Mhm.
with our agent Bennett and his boss in the room. So that part I was a little confused. I'm like, why do they want us to think that maybe he switched sides? Like I feel like that could have been a little more of an obvious red herring, or less obvious red herring,
Mhm.
whichever. I think they could have pointed to that more, that like, hey, we want you to think that this guy is switched sides and he's actually not on their side. He's going to turn Ro and Zeta in, or he actually, like, in order, he's okay with establishing a relationship with Ro, but he really also doesn't believe that Zeta's a good robot. He's bought into the lie, and then have it revealed that actually he actually is on their side, have him a double cross. But it's not that obvious, or it's a little too obvious, I guess, that he's seemingly on their side the entire time, which I guess is okay also. But yeah, I gave this one a 5 out of 10. I think it's fine. It's not boring in the ways that some of the other episodes that we've hated have been boring. It's not great, but it's 21 minutes of just big bowl of okay.
Totally fair. I went just 1 point lower with a 4 out of 10, mostly just because the idea that, and you could interfere this directly in any sort of like local or let alone federal law enforcement attempted arrest and not be immediately sent to like the deepest darkest prison in our nation is impossible. And the
Yeah.
fact that apparently Bennett was genuinely going to just release Roe into his company, that was what I thought was going to be the twist, was going to be Casey was going to realize that he wasn't actually going to, that he was going to arrest
Oh,
Roe
yeah.
too and like send her to juvenile detention or whatever. But it's not. It like we don't even get that far. He repeats that yes, you'll be remand, you'll go with your brother, you'll go into his custody or whatever. So the idea that Roe's gonna get off scot free, I thought was also strange, because it feels like, well, they've been chasing this guy for 2 years and she's been aiding and abetting him the whole time. So why would they just let her go with like a slap on the wrist? And similarly, when it was very clear that this guy was just, caused a crash that let the dangerous fugitive get away, they just like, Bennett's like, I'll be watching you. You better act right from here on out. It's like, you're in charge of like the NSA, man. Arrest this guy.
I was gonna say it probably would have been interesting, because then you have a tension point there of Ro now Ro's brother sacrificing himself
Mm-hmm.
on her behalf, and then that becomes another interesting point for Ro, like a plot point for Ro. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of them just constantly being on the run from the NSA, now she also has to figure out how is she going to rescue her brother, or what can she do to get her brother free from the NSA's clutches. Yeah, I think that is a missed opportunity for it to be a little bit more interesting there. I don't know how. I mean, we only have 3 episodes, four technically counting the one that we still have to review today, but that one does not contain Rose's brother. So I don't know how many episodes, if he appears in any additional episodes. But yeah, if this is it for Rose's brother, yeah, it's kind of a missed opportunity. Not sure, really sure, other than hey, Rose got family out there, which is cool, great, awesome. But if he never shows up again, or if they didn't really have additional plans for him, I would be it is kind of pointless at that point. But yeah, so not great scores from us, obviously, but we've definitely seen worse.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on to animation and visuals for this week, Liam. Our animation for this episode was provided by Sunmin Image Pictures Co. So we have them as the animation studio for this week, directed by DCAU veteran Kurt Gaeta. So yeah, I don't have a ton of animation things to stand out here. I did not catch too many Easter eggs in the what do they call it? PictoCon. I did not see anything that stood out. I was a little confused uh,
Mm.
about the fact that they had a superhero named Squirrel Girl when that's obviously the very popular name of a Marvel superhero, Squirrel Girl. So you and I did a little research beforehand, and we determined, yeah, this Squirrel Girl has been around since the early '90s. So this
Hmm.
is well after a decade after her debut in Marvel Comics. So the fact that there was a usage of a character now, she doesn't. It's literally a 30-second, maybe a 60-second appearance. There's a brief little bit where it's supposed to be, I guess, a moving panel of a comic book, and then that's what Roe is disguised as to try and evade the NSA briefly. So we don't really get a backstory. There's no like, oh, this is the a direct copy of that character. But the fact that it is a pretty abstract name for a character and they just went with it again is one of those things that I feel like did the Zeta Project just get away with so much because nobody was like watching it? Like, were they allowed to get away with like copyright strikes or avoid potential copyright
Yeah.
violations because nobody watched it?
Yeah, maybe just a different. I mean, Squirrel Girl, I think, didn't really become like a regularly used character until probably the late to the 2000s.
Sure.
So, early 2010s perhaps. She had like kind of a celebrated comic run, I think, during that time that was a much more comedic take on the character. But to your point, she had appearances, at least a few of them. So maybe it was just genuinely, yeah, nobody was watching and it wasn't a character, at the forefront. But you would think that just has to be something whenever you're doing anything, you have to just like double check names and things like that. But yeah, I guess they got away with one here, one way or the other. My other note was that her partner Dark Owl certainly had a very BTAS Batman chin
Mhm.
and costume to him.
For
That
sure.
that was kind of a fun little visual gag. But yeah, that was a really fascinating little act, perhaps accidental Marvel Easter egg in this here Zeta Project cartoon.
Yeah, the only other visual thing that I thought was funny was Zeta's disguise when they go to meet Rose brother for the first time in public. I'm like 75% sure it's based on former professional wrestler Jake the Snake Roberts. He comes out of the shadows and he's got like this mustache and mullet and he's carrying this gigantic green bag, which very famously in the 80s, Jake Roberts' gimmick was that he would carry a green duffel bag to the ring that contained his venomous, well, not venomous, his snake, Damien, to the ring. So I think maybe I'm seeing things crossover, but I'm pretty sure it was an homage to old Jake Roberts there with the way that he looked. But other than that, I was kind of disappointed there weren't other other homages or little Easter eggs in the at least that stood out to me in the Comic Con scene. I felt like they could have snuck a couple things in there, but maybe they were okay with, you know, potentially violating copyrights of other comic books, but not the home company that they were working for. The people would have caught that a little bit easier, I guess. I don't know. The other thing, of course, it's not a visual thing, but we mentioned McCurdy being the name for Rose brother Casey McCurdy. He mentions that it's a family name based on the people that adopted him, I believe. But of course, Gene McCurdy, very famously, pretty important figure in the DCAU, pretty important figure in the Batman the Animated Series green lighting, and was responsible for really tag teaming with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and those guys, and getting a lot of the stuff through that otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to get through BS&P and standing
Mm-hmm.
up for that show. So pretty cool that she gets a legendary shout out here, assuming that that's what that nod is there with the last name McCurdy.
Absolutely, that is very nice. Yeah, I guess his design, I guess they did the best they could because I think we had seen like a little hologram image of what Casey looked like as a kid. So they just kind of like tried to age that up and then give him a goatee. So yeah, I didn't really have many other notes about the episode itself. This is yeah, Soon Mean, I feel like it looks a little PBS animation to me, a little extra.
Hmm.
Maybe it's like an extra, maybe the way the eyes are drawn or something like that. I didn't find anything too stiff or anything, but yeah, nothing really spectacular to write home about in the visuals department. Kind of the fun sequence. That's like the most. It's funny because we talked about Bob Goodman, the showrunner's idea for this show being the fugitive, and it's like this feels like maybe the first time ever we just had a one-on-one chase between Bennett and Zeta.
Hmm.
So them running across the top of a bridge was kind of a cool set piece for that. But yeah, nothing spectacular, but certainly nothing that harmed my enjoyment of the episode to say the least. So I just settled on a 5 out of 10 for visuals.
Yep, I went with the same exact score for that one. The funny thing that you mentioned in the rundown of the plot, Agent Bennett getting hit by a helicopter. That was a moment where I was like, did I just see that? He got hit by a helicopter and he like survived. I feel like that's one of those things where maybe in the script or in the storyboards something got confused when they went to the actual animation point that like Agent Bennett's not a superhero, he's not Superman, he's not shouldn't be able to get hit by a car or hit by a bus or something and survive. He should definitely not be able to be hit by a helicopter and be able to survive, but made for a funny bit that I chuckled at. Yeah, but I went with the same exact score. I think it's fine. There's a couple of neat sequences towards the end there. Him shooting his arm to save the falling helicopter through the fog is kind of cool. The way that they fade out into the fog, Ro and Zeta fade out into the fog as they escape is kind of neat too. But yeah, not a ton to write home about as far as animation or visuals. We'll move on to music, Liam. And who did music this week? I know you mentioned it, but I was not paying attention.
We have Michael McQuistion on the docket this week.
There we go. Mr. McQuistion, of course, one of our dynamic music partners. Yeah, not a ton to write home about music here. Typical sort of synthesizer fare that we have throughout the episode. There is a little bit of a kind of a semi-eerie sounding music that plays when they fade out in that final scene through the fog, and then a little bit more triumphant, kind of happy music, I guess, which is kind of standard for this show. You get things that are a little bit brighter when Ro is sharing the news with her brother at the end, and they're kind of discovering this hidden article and all of that. But yeah, not a ton as far as musical notes that stood out to me. I guess other than I think the chase sequence on the bridge that you mentioned, which is kind of the standout action point or the culmination of all the action for the episode, is kind of is decent. It's fine. It sets the tone for the scene, as does kind of starting things off with the chase sequence also and the music that accompanies it. But yeah, not a ton here that sets it apart or really defines anything different than any other Zeta episode for me. So I just went with a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, same. Certainly nothing wrong with it. Maybe some good action beat music with the chases at the end there, but yeah, nothing really stood out, unfortunately.
All right. And Liam, that will take us to our final category for our first episode in today's double feature. That will be voice acting. Not a huge cast to discuss today. Let's go ahead and break down this episode's voice cast, shall we?
Absolutely. Just a few folks to talk about here. Playing the ironically, usually it's Diedrich Bader just doing all the voices, but when he is disguised as Dark Owl, or maybe it's when they actually I think it's when the nerds at the convention are watching. It's supposed to be like I guess it's an animated comic book they're reading. But Dark Owl in that little sequence, the Batman stand-in is voiced by Lou Ray Cooper, who folks might know from The Wire, as well as many other TV shows. A lot of guest work in his back pocket. But I thought that was kind of a cool random one to throw in there. We have Charles Kimbrough playing Pat Jensen. That's Casey's boss at the Vid News, and folks might know him from a long-standing. In fact, he was on almost 250 episodes of the show Murphy Brown, which was on a long time ago, and then I think came back for like 2 seasons again in the late 2010s.
It was one of those things when networks were like, "Oh, we can just reboot shows instead of coming up with new original ideas. Let's see if we can get some nostalgia going
Yep.
here."
Yep, that Roseanne revival worked really well for a minute, and then something happened. Like who can remember? And in the midst of that success, I think about 9 other shows from the 80s and 90s got a green light to come back as well. So he apparently was back on the reboot as well. But yeah, Mr. Kimbrough as he's kind of our secondary antagonist of the episode, as he's just this I guess a J. Jonah Jameson type, just cares about getting the story and morals and ethics be damned, and he has no time to hear about Casey's sort of confliction about whether or not he should turn in Zeta and by extension Ro, and he just wants the scoop. And so he does a solid job as the domineering boss, I guess.
He's fine. Yeah, he plays the role to a T, does everything that's asked of him, and I bought him as a sort of skeezy, underhanded boss who's only interested. I mean, he's not doing anything wrong to the best of his knowledge. These are two fugitives, but
Right.
the fact that he's using it as leverage to try and get like a good news story and also trying to like blackmail this guy to turn in his own sister is the underhanded part, obviously. So yeah, you get that edginess to him, and it comes through in the performance perfectly fine.
Absolutely. And we do briefly, unfortunately, have Blaine Barbosa as Bucky in this episode as he facilitates the initial connection. Not much to say about him, thankfully, but we'll get to him in the next episode we're talking about. Elsewhere, also in minor roles, some returning voices. We have Dominique Jennings as Agent Rush, our second season replacement for Agent Lee, because I guess Lauren Tom figured out she was too good for this show and split. Just kidding. I don't know why they chose to do that. But yes, we have Dominique Jennings and, of course, Michael Rosenbaum as Agent West. They get a little bit of more slapstick to do with the cable car bit, where she tells him to tell the robot driving the cable car to slow down, and he can't get it to slow down, so he just destroys it, and then the cable car goes careening out of control. So the usual madcap misadventures for our agents. They're doing their best to add a little levity to the situation.
Yeah, the best part is I think the best part of both of these two episodes, ultimately, by the time we're done scoring these, is Agent West for me. So obviously his buffoonery and trying to unplug or stop the car from moving forward. Agent Rush is like, "You can handle that, can you?" And he's like real adamant, like, "Yeah." And he looks at the robot, and clearly there's nothing. He doesn't know what to do, and then he does the wrong thing. And then ultimately the reason why Ro and Zeta end up getting away is because Agent West's helicopter spins into and knocks the news helicopter down. So once that news helicopter ends through the fog, you hear Agent Bennett go on the radio, and you hear a bunch of voices trying to call out like what's going on, and it's like, oh, we can't find him. Where is he? Oh, I think the chopper's down, and then you just hear Agent West come through and go, "It's not my fault." Good stuff. Some great
Yes,
stuff.
that is
Michael Rosenbaum there. That made me laugh. I appreciated his delivery of the line. Some good stuff from both of our agents there.
absolutely. And as you said, we'll maybe talk more about that in episode 2 here. But yes, then we have of course we have Kurtwood Smith as Agent Bennett once again here again. He's doing his thing, and he's good at what he does. I was just a little bit shocked because maybe it's just because of the way everything he delivers just sounds kind of overtly angry or sinister, that again I just assumed that he was going to double cross Casey and arrest Roe and him maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he didn't. So I thought it was almost, I don't think it was the writer's intent to have it be humorous, but at the end when he's just like, Casey, I'm watching you, and kind of shakes his fist, I was like, that's his delivery of that is very funny, even though I don't necessarily think it was intended to be funny. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this in plot, but did he just forget everything that Zeta did in the episode where he was nominated for worst father of the DCAU, where he almost let his kid drown?
Mhm.
He just completely forgot everything about, and he's just like, yeah, he's definitely still brainwashed. Like, okay, man, whatever. But anyway, that's plot, not the actor. Obviously, Kurtwood Smith, fantastic voice actor, fantastic actor, and yeah, every line that he delivers is delivered with the right amount of intensity to believe that he's this NSA agent who has a short memory apparently, and has just hell bent on getting this robot back in custody, shaking his fist at random citizens and all.
Absolutely. And then our big guest star, we have Lucas Haas as Casey. His biggest credits probably came quite a few years after this, as he was in Inception, and later on had a guest starring role as one of the cousins on The Righteous Gemstones, playing Casey McCurdy here, aka Casey Rowan, I guess. And he's fine. I wasn't wowed by anything he did, but he has this sort of vulnerability. Maybe this is my fault for not paying attention to the show we've been reviewing for like 4 years. But I was like, I thought he was Rose's younger brother, so I was kind of confused when he showed up and he's like got a receding hairline and a
Mhm.
goatee. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's got some warmth, I think, especially when he's speaking to Roe, and then ultimately makes the right choice at the end. I think he does an all right job, but I feel like I was too distracted by, like, I didn't expect him to be this old. So that kind of distracted me from maybe evaluating Mr. Haas's performance completely objectively. But I think he does an all right job.
I dare say Mr. Haas's defining role, by the way, is as the patient in the hospital in the Welcome to the Black Parade My Chemical Romance music video.
Wow.
So I just want to throw that out there for any MCR fans that may be listening to this.
Oh,
But yeah, I didn't love Mr. Haas's performance. I think there were maybe glimpses or like little things. I think the best part is the little reminiscing that he does with Roe, or where he's sharing a little bit of their backstory. Uh, but the rest of it, I felt like was a bit of a mixed bag. I don't know how many voice acting roles he had before or after this. Um, Not quite sure. Maybe it was just an off day, but I was not thrilled with it. I didn't think it was awful,
hmm.
but I also didn't. I felt like it was supposed to be a warmer character that felt a little bit more connected to Ro, even though it's a long lost sibling. So maybe it would be like a little awkward for them to be introduced. But by the end of it, when he's giving that video like Easter egg to her, I was like, I feel like this could be a little warmer. But yeah, so nobody's perfect. Not sometimes we all have off days. So was not my favorite performance for a voice actor. So it definitely influenced my ending score here.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we just have our two leads to talk about here. Julie Nathanson as Ro, and also Squirrel Girl, apparently. And then we also have Diedrich Bader, who's playing Zeta, of course. And also, I think he's one of the nerd fans
Mm-hmm.
complaining about how the next issue of their comic isn't out yet. But yeah, I mean, they do a solid job. This is a big episode for Miss Nathanson, especially because it's, as we said, this plot has moved forward. The big plots for, like, since almost the first episode has been Rose searching for her family and Zeta searching for Dr. Selig, and it's like, okay, we have 3 episodes left, and we finally got an update to one of those stories. So, and she does a good job bringing that, like, the excitement and concern in finding her brother after all this time. I think she does a good job, even as perhaps the script was unfortunately letting her down a little bit.
Yeah, I think she is great. We've talked a lot about how her and Mr. Bader really are the pillars for this show and carry a lot of what happens here. I think I was close to giving this a 4, which in voice acting, I think
Mhm.
ultimately though I settled basically because of Miss Nathanson's role here. Ended up with giving it a 5. I think she really does lift
Nice.
that score a little bit there. And of course, Mr. Bader is just like, even though he doesn't have a ton to do in this episode, a lot of it is Zeta running around and there's not much emoting from him. He's solid there. He's a good backbone for you to hold the things together. So yeah, 5 ended up being my score for this episode.
Nice. Yeah, I gave it the exact same score of 5. So a lot of fives today. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, Miss Nathan does a great job. I do think maybe the best joke or quip across the 2 episodes is when Ro asks after their second call, when Casey is setting them up to be captured. Just why was he so short and weird, like, and aggressive with me? And Zeta goes, genetic traits. I think that's a good joke.
That was
So I
good.
appreciated Zeta's maybe perhaps accidental sarcastic quip there. So good job by Miss Nathanson and Mr. Bader, as you said, perhaps elevating our scores just on the strength of their chemistry as voice actors. So that will start to wrap us up in the first episode. Thank goodness.
Yeah, totaling things up. And again, not our lowest score of all time. Definitely not our lowest Zeta score of all time. 20 out of 40 ended up being my score for On the Wire. What about you?
And I think I'm just 1 point lower. I think we just had one difference in plot this
Mhm.
week, and so I settled on a 19 out of 40. Rewatchability, unfortunately, this is a big one. As we said, this is the first time, like, a plot element of Zeta has been updated since, like, the season 2 premiere.
Hmm.
So I think if you're watching Zeta, you got to watch this one. It's important to Zeta. It's not important to the DCAU, because
Correct.
nothing that happens in this show is important to the DCAU.
Yeah.
So we'll give it the reluctant one thumb up, I would say, for rewatchability.
Yeah, it's important to Zeta. It is not important to anything else ever in the history of humanity. If this disappeared from the internet tomorrow, would it make a sound? Would anyone make a sound? Probably not. But for this series, sure, it's important for this series. All right, Liam. Well, that will take us to part 2 of our double feature today, and that is with the very next episode, which is called Cabin Pressure. This episode originally aired on July the 27th, 2002. We'll get the official IMDb synopsis, which once again is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. The best way to support the podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, and please consider becoming either a one-time supporter of the podcast or a monthly supporter. Either way, we hope that you will support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is for Cabin Pressure, which was written by Lyle Weldon, directed by Rob Davies and Olaf Miller. That's right, 2 people. Music by Michael McCuistion and animation by Dong Wu. And that synopsis reads as such. Zeta and Ro must rescue Bucky when the NSA arrest him for being in league with Brothers Day. Um, I know Brothers Day gets mentioned. That's the terrorist group that Zeta was infiltrating. Bennett does mention that in like recapping. Does he actually think Bucky's a part of it? I don't feel like I got that sense because he's like trying to interrogate him to figure out why he's involved in this the whole time.
Yeah, I didn't. He doesn't know. I think he suspects that he's involved, but the whole
Okay.
thing is that he doesn't know how or why.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give that an F because that's not actually what happens. Unfortunately, you were 70% of the way there, and then you used ChatGPT for the last couple paragraphs, and they summarized the movie version instead of the book. So see us after class.
Yes, and this is one of those episodes that does not have a full recap on any of the wikis. So
Luckily, it's a pretty straightforward. It all takes place basically in one location after about the first 5 minutes.
sure does. Yeah, so we have it opens up and our agents realize that Liam's favorite character, here we go,
Mm.
Bucky, once again a huge part of this episode. He's responsible for hacking into the NSA's systems. He's involved with it. They've traced it back to him. And because of this, I believe Agent Rush brings this to Agent Bennett's attention. They
Mhm.
decide that they're going to storm this young man's house. Of course, this is actually maybe the most
They
accurate thing.
swatted him.
Yeah. I literally was thinking, I was like, oh, this could actually happen. I believe this. Like, this isn't too far-fetched.
Happens to a Twitch streamer like 3 times a week if
Right.
my social media algorithms are any indication.
A 13-year-old boy, as we learn on this episode, gets the NSA invading his house, arresting him. Where his parents are, nobody knows. But he's arrested. Oh, wait, did his parents get turned into babies? Is that why he doesn't have parents? Is that canon for the show?
I think they turned him back at the end, but I can't remember, and I refuse to engage with trying to remember that episode.
I think they got turned into babies, but maybe not turned all the way back, so they have to grow up still. And then remember the villain for that episode got put on the bus with them.
I forgot.
I think, and that was the end. Ha ha ha!
This
Now
is a
the
Batman
town has
Beyond
38.
spinoff. Did we mention that?
Anyway, gosh, why can I remember how that episode went, but can't remember the password for my like phone half the time? Anyway, yeah, so he gets swatted, he gets captured. In the process, he hits a fail-safe switch, which sends a message to Zeta and Ro, who are out backpacking. Ro is having quite the difficult time. Zeta's just living his life, enjoying it, and educating Ro on the dangers of pollen and all kinds of allergies because she's having trouble breathing. Thankfully, though, they are very close to where Bucky is. Bucky's message gets to them in Princess Leia fashion in a blue hologram form, and we learn that a long time ago, he actually put a failsafe device in Zeta that allowed him to send this message and provides this override to Zeta. So we learned that he gives this message saying that he's in some sort of trouble, that he set up this failsafe in the event that he was, and that he needs them to find him. So Ro reluctantly agrees because Zeta's heart is made of gold and decides that he needs to help find Bucky. So they thankfully are able to track him very close to their location. They learn that he's on some sort of government base, the NSA base specifically. And we find out he's actually on an NSA transport, which is basically a G.I. Joe vehicle that's in the future, I guess. It's like a helicarrier, but it's an actual plane. So we get Bucky is on this plane. He's getting interrogated by Agent Bennett, demanding, as Liam said in the synopsis here, to know how he's related to Zeta and Ro, why he's been helping them, what he's done to help them. And we learn Zeta and Ro are able to not only sneak onto the base, but then sneak onto the actual vehicle before it takes off. They're doing some sneaking around. Why would they ever turn into their like very obvious personas here and not be in some sort of disguise immediately? That's the part that gets me. Like in this,
Yeah.
you're sneaking around a government vehicle and you're very obviously identifiable as fugitives to the NSA? Why would you not be in some sort of holographic disguise here? Why would you be in your civvies? I don't know. But they are, and they get spotted immediately and they get captured. So uh, or not captured, but they get cornered, and this allows some questioning to continue with as Agent Bennett is alerted that Zeta is there on the ship. So he runs off, leaving Agent West in charge of guarding Bucky, which of course is going to turn into nothing but hilarity. Bucky says that he can do it. The fun, I think the funniest line of the episode happens when Agent West is standing right there, and suddenly something comes blaring over over the loudspeakers, and Agent Bennett goes, "What's that?" And Agent West goes, "An alarm."
I did in fact have that in my notes as well. That is maybe I laughed out loud at that
It was
gag.
just the pause
So.
and the way that he like gives side eye. He says, "An alarm." So good. So this leaves,
Quite incredible.
yeah, this leaves Agent West with Bucky and sends Agent Bennett to investigate, see if he can corner Zeta. We see that Agent Rush has some sort of device that they've discovered in the all of the belongings that they took of Bucky's that were tagged and brought with them. And we learned it is a remote control that they'll be able to control Zeta with. So Agent Bennett and Agent Rush head off to find Zeta where he's cornered. And Agent West is left with Bucky, who has a plan of his own on how he can maybe upset the chessboard here.
Absolutely. So as there was a passing reference to a video game series called Centuries of the Last Cosmos, see it as a Batman Beyond crossover show.
It's all connected.
And that's right. And Bucky makes a crack about that game series, and Agent West is very excited to know that there's a fellow gamer on board with him. But of course, then he has to try to play it cool. Bucky offers to show Agent West how to get to the 9th level of another video game. You could tell how like far away this was from where like video games still had levels.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure in 2001 or whenever this came out that video games still had levels in the traditional sense, but instead Bucky tells him that he'll let him in on a secret Easter egg that lets you jump to a high level, and so Agent West is first you think is going to just not possibly be silly enough to fall for that, as Bucky tells him that all he has to do is get him online, and that will allow him to show Agent West what to do. But of course, Agent West, being the foolish man that he is, takes Bucky right over the computer and lets him start typing away. And to Bucky's credit, he does show Agent West how to find this secret portal to the 9th level of this video game. But while doing that, he also begins hacking into the Flying Fortress's mainframe. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, Agent Rush has given Bennett the device, the remote control that Bucky used to control Zeta in a couple of episodes back in season 1. And in fact, it still works. And as Zeta points out, he has no way to resist, seemingly, as Bennett takes control, seemingly having both Zeta and Ro dead to rights. Oh, actually, Ro gets away. But clearly he has Zeta dead to rights. But then, just at that moment, as Agent West realizes he's been had, he comes rushing into the room and fires his laser blast at Zeta, apparently not realizing that Bennett is now in control of him, and blasts a hole in the side of the ship. Of course, they're at very high altitude. So out goes not only Zeta flying out of the hole in the hull, but as well, the remote control conveniently also goes flying down, plummeting away. So their way of controlling Zeta. But clearly Zeta just fell to his death, so it's all fine, right? But no, as we see that Ro and Bucky meet up in the meantime, and they find an escape pod. Apparently there's only one, which will become relevant in a few minutes here, despite there being like a crew of like 100 people on this ship. So Bucky and Ro hop in there, and Bucky's a little concerned that he won't understand the controls, but then he just does. And so they fly away just as Bennett instructs the pilots to lower the altitude so that he can go out in his magnet boots and check. And sure enough, Zeta did not fall to his doom, but is instead hanging for dear life on the side of the aircraft. Bennett tries to capture him one last time, pointing out that while Zeta can do many things, he can't fly. However, just in that moment, here comes Bucky and Ro in the escape pod, little mini aircraft that comes flying away, goes rocking away, and Zeta uses his extendo grappling hook hand thing to hitch a ride, and they go flying off. The ship tries to pursue them. However, they go zipping through the buildings of the local city, and the aircraft is just too big to follow them. And that seemingly allows our trio to escape. We get one last little postscript where we see Bucky doing a little soldering and circuitry work on Zeta, noting that from now on, he's corrected Zeta's mainframe so that not even he will be able to control Zeta with any kind of remote control. Zeta is his own man, or his own robot from here on out, and that Bennett won't be able to control him either. They ask what Bucky's going to do. Obviously, he can't return home now that the NSA knows who he is. And Bucky says he's got an uncle somewhere in the underground hacking world, and that he's going to go look him up. And so they let Bucky get on a subway, jetting away by himself. And when they ask how they'll find him again, he says instead that if he needs them, he'll find them. And he goes zipping away as Ro and Zeta live to fight another day as we wrap up here.
He actually says, "Don't worry, I'll find you." I feel like that was a threat.
This punk. But yes, that's his parting words for Ro and Zeta, who Ro still not quite wanting to admit that she appreciates Bucky's work, even though it appears there is also like a little bit of drama where the ship is damaged by an EM pulse, and Zeta has to use some of his power to repower the ship. Thankfully, Zeta wasn't hit by the EM pulse.
That was my question.
Even though he's also wrapped around the ship, I don't know how it electrified the entire ship and didn't touch him. But
yeah, that was my question. How did he not get? He definitely should have been. It's electromagnetic. Like, what are we doing? EM is electromagnetic, so he's metal. He's on the ship. Wouldn't it have just go through the ship and he's on it and attack it? I don't know.
Yes,
somehow
you would think, but however, yes. So Zeta saves the day for everybody, and then yes, as we mentioned, they have this little postscript where Bucky heads off in his own direction, and Zeta and Ro continue on in theirs.
All right, so I actually liked this episode a little bit better than the previous episode. I feel like that, despite it having multiple plot holes, it did feel like an action adventure, like thriller. They have to break in and a caper. They got to break in and they got to steal Bucky out, and they got to, how are they going to escape? And there's some great Agent West buffoonery in here where this poor guy, he just wants to do his job so well, and he can't get out of his own way. Like, obviously, he gets bamboozled by this boy genius here that tricks him into playing video games with him and to distract him. But then he finally gets his chance. He sees Zeta, like, he's got him dead to rights, but actually, Zeta's already under NSA control. He just doesn't know it. So he shoots his weapon and creates this gigantic hole in the side of the ship. Poor Agent West. But yeah, there's some fun moments here. It doesn't really drag. There is a little bit of tension that comes from how is Zeta going to survive a 40,000 foot drop? Like, that's a real conversation that Ro and Bucky have in the middle of this. I like the little, like, we'll talk about in visuals in a second maybe, but the little gadgets that the NSA agents have to climb on the outside of the ship. I don't know how they're breathing in that thin of airspace, but sure. Just some electromagnetic gloves is all they needed, and boots.
Well, they do have a line of dialogue where Agent Bennett is like, lower us to an altitude where I can breathe, or something like that.
That's right. we solved it.
Now, I don't know if you were moving that fast on the side of the plane, if it matters how low you are, because I imagine it would still be like just the faster your body would moving. I imagine your body would just turn into like a mushy bag of blood if you're if you're moving that fast. But they did at least throw in they had a throwaway line to cover that
That's true
for continuity purposes, I guess.
Yeah. But I do kind of like this, and the fact, even though Bucky is an insufferable character, I like by the end of it that he's kind of finally accepted on the team, only for him to once again kind of gain the upper hand and be like, actually, I'm you guys want me, you guys can't have me. So very, very funny that's how that ends up with that character. But I actually gave plot a 6 out of 10 for this episode. I did not have a horrible time. I think it keeps your attention enough for an above average score than what we typically give these episodes. It moves at a clip. It doesn't feel like it drags. And my only question was, how in the world did they have one escape pod? But of course, we know that they could only have one escape pod because at the end, otherwise Agent Bennett would have been able to pursue them through the city landscape that Zeta is piloting the pod through. So, and it's actually not even a pod; it's like a mini jet essentially. So, they didn't have any other way on or off that ship. It's that's your government funding. It works there, guys. They're typical government waste.
Absolutely, but there's elements I like about it. I like that again. It's this kind of this race to get on the ship, and then they're immediately discovered. So there's not a lot of like hijinks of Zeta trying to blend in. It's just like you said, they're just kind of chasing him the whole episode, and feels like our hero characters are kind of all on their back foot. So I appreciated that. My only thoughts, and we try to judge these on their individual merit, but since we just watched an episode where an adult man with a receding hairline interfered in their investigation, and he immediately was like set free to go to get another job, and apparently Agent Bennett was going to release Ro because even though she's helped him escape numerous times, he believes that she's still somehow some like innocent, confused girl. They arrest Bucky at the age of 13 for also aiding Zeta.
Look, I'm telling you, he doesn't have any parents in that house. There's no parents in that house. They're babies.
Yeah, I was just like, I was shocked. The baby parent episode with the cavemen. Ugh, awful. But yeah, I just took that as like, it's a bit silly to be. Also, I'll be honest, I wanted Agent Bennett to hit Bucky when he was mouthing off. I think if Agent Bennett had hit Bucky, I would have liked this episode more. Yes, just backhand him, just pimp slap him right across the face. I think that would have been wonderful and would have increased the plot score by maybe 2 or 3 points alone. But unfortunately, standards and practices and all that. But I think as an adventure episode, and as we said, comparing it to some of the recent season 2 episodes we've covered, at least there are stakes to it, and our status quo is shaken up a little bit as now Bucky, while going off on his own, is also kind of on the run, and Zeta and Ro continue on their way. That's at least a little bit of a shaking up of the status quo, instead of just having Bucky continually hack like every government database on Earth and nobody notices. So they at least kind of paid that off after a while. So I still had that, and there only being one escape pod on a ship with like 400 people. I still settled on a 4 out of 10 for plot. I don't love it, but it is better than I enjoyed it more, and I think there's at least some stakes to what happens.
Sure, and if I didn't mention, I gave it 2 points higher, which is almost worthy of a disagreement alarm with the Zeta Project episode. But I'm not wasting my time on editing the disagreement alarm in this episode for that. So it's 6 out of 10 for me for plot. So just a bit of a difference there. All right, let's talk about animation and visuals next for this second episode, Liam. And I believe Coco and Dong Yang responsible for this, or Dong Wu rather, responsible for this episode. Dong Wu Animation Studios responsible. So I think I mentioned at the top the hella jet thing that they're flying is an interesting. It looks like a GI Joe toy, essentially, that they just upscaled and made a little bit futuristic looking. Um, the I think the remote control that controls Zeta is the least futuristic looking thing in this episode. It looks like, I don't know, something that in a 70s sci-fi show that you would think that they're like, yes, this is what a
Mhm.
remote control for a robot will look like in the future. So didn't love that. Uh, there's some okay things with the episode. There's some really janky animation. I think some of the expressions that Ro has, especially in the first part of the episode where they're hiking, and then when she's I think falling. She doesn't fall out of the plane. Maybe when Zeta falls out of the plane, some of the emotion that she shows is a little bit more Eastern animation influence. She looked a little bit more like a anime character in some of the ways that they emote. Bigger eyes, really big expression, much more expressive than I feel like we're used to with a Zeta Project episode. So I don't know if that has to do with the difference between watching this and the Sunmin episode back to back, and this being a little bit different of a style or what. But this one definitely felt like it had a little more, even in the way that the characters moved. Like when Ro falls kind of down, like she's exhausted, she just kind of plops down in the when they're hiking at the beginning too. That felt like more of a something that you would see a character in Teen Titans do than what we're typically used to watching here, which of course Teen Titans has that Eastern animation influence also. So um yeah, I didn't love the sequence the sequence where Zeta finally like gets off of the plane and then he ends up landing on the escape pod. He like lands on it like a guy would land on a horse with his legs split, and the animation just looks so bad. Like he just kind of like plops down, and it's a bad sequence. It's bad looking. I did not love the way that ended up looking. Some scaling issues also I felt with the way that he compared to the pod and then what the pod ends up looking like later on there. So some positives and negatives here with this. I thought the video game sequence, the fact that they did a whole sequence inside the video game of Agent West playing the video game was kind of fun. Um, but and of course there's some physical comedy once Bucky takes over the hacks and takes over the airplane and keeps flipping it from side to side, and you see Agent West go from one end of the plane to the other end, and then a tower of luggage or boxes fall on top of him, and like there's comedy of course there, physical comedy that's decent. But yeah, I didn't love some of the things here, so I felt like I had to give it a 1 point lower than I did the last episode. So I ended up giving 4 out of 10 for my visuals and animation here. Not a ton. The sequence also where the air pod or the escape pod flies through the city at the end, like it's supposed to be this POV shot through the buildings. That didn't look super great. It kind of looks very jumpy, like it's very segmented. Like they pass one building and then it's like the next part loads almost like you're watching a PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah, it feels very much like 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, just not great in the way that ended up looking. So 4 out of 10 was what I settled on for my score for animation. What about you?
Yeah, fair enough. I gave it a 5, so not much difference there. Yeah, I think everything's okay. I did like the design of the big aircraft. I like it's white and then it has like these like a red circle on the bottom, which also made me think of the animated Fantastic Four
Mm-hmm.
Fantasticar
Mm-hmm.
from the 90s show, which we didn't have the Fantasticar. We had like the other vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
I as memory serves, but I that evoked Fantastic Four to me, so I appreciated that. And yeah, the designs and the backgrounds of everything in the ship are very cool. That feels way more like future sci-fi than most of the technology, as you said in the episode, feels so silly. But and yeah, and the sequence of of Zeta repowering the ship is interesting, even though, as you said, he's kind of straddling it in a really strange way while he does it. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's kind of fun. I like the design of the fake video game that Bucky and Agent West are playing. But yeah, there's some fun bits in here, and it's got some fun there. And yes, I think when Agent West runs in and just blasts a hole in the side of the ship is a pretty funny visual gag as well. So some solid stuff, although nothing to write home about, unfortunately.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our third category of this second episode, and that, of course, is going to be music. Who did our music for this episode?
Once again, it is Mr. McQuestion.
There we go. And I feel like this is going to be a copy and paste, kind of what I said from the from the previous episode. I don't think there was one piece that stood out to me other than maybe that sequence where Bucky takes over the airplane that added a little bit of comedy to the physical nature of what's happening to Agent West. And then a little bit with the tension that builds when the pod gets hit by that EM pulse thing and begins to shut down. Like there's some tension that builds there that makes things a little intense. So the music swells there for that sequence, but not a ton that stood out other than those sequences for me. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, nothing really else stood out to me, and I ended up giving it a 5 out of 10 for our music score.
Yep, I gave it the exact same score, 5 out of 10. So that will take us to our final category of the day, Liam, which will be once again our voice cast. And once again, not a huge one to cover for this episode, but we'll go ahead and run down those that appear in this episode. Let's talk about our voice cast.
Yeah, mostly our returning characters that we talked about, but we do briefly have Melanie Chardoff as one of the scientists and Neil Ross as the pilot. Mr. Ross actually done quite a few additional voices, maybe most famously as the voice of Ratso in Read My Lips, Batman the Animated Series episode. Also does a lot of additional voices elsewhere in Superman, New Batman Adventures. Really ran the whole Kids WB gamut there with the Superman and now Zeta. But yeah, they are there as well. And then we once again have briefly Dominique Jennings as Agent Rush. He's the one who figures out the controller and gives it to Bennett. Once again, we have Agent West, Michael Rosenbaum, who, as mentioned, probably has the best line of the episode. Certainly, when Kurtwood asks him, or if Agent Bennett asks him what's going on when the alarm starts sounding, and he just says it's an alarm, kind of almost like he's asking a question, like he's not sure, which is amazing.
Right.
But a lot of fun from those two, and of course, once again, we have Agent Bennett, Kurtwood Smith. He's very good. He's very menacing. I think he spends a lot of the episode interrogating Bucky and sort of talking down to him in a really menacing way, which I think is good because we so often lack like an actual villain or antagonist on this show. And so it's good to remind him that he can be scary, even though it does feel like, as you mentioned, this is not Mr. Smith's fault, but after the events of the episode where Zeta and him had to work together to save his son, that you would think maybe Bennett would also be having some second thoughts about his belief that Zeta is such a menace and a nemesis, but no, he's still resolute in his in determination to capture and control Zeta once again. But yeah, I think all three of our agents do a solid job. Maybe not a ton for them to do, but they do a good job.
Yeah, the agents are fine. I think I think the missed opportunity that you mentioned was a little more back and forth between Agent Bennett and Bucky. I think would have been a little bit funnier, but especially Agent Bennett just letting him have it with his no nonsenseness. But yeah, they're all fine. Agent West, of course, steals the show. Michael Rosenbaum, very unsurprisingly, is really good, despite having not a huge role for this week's episode, but probably bigger than most episodes. So he gets an opportunity to shine here.
Yeah, his childlike joy in getting to discuss video games is quite enjoyable as well. But speaking of Bucky, we have Blaine Barbosa returning once again. Listen, this is maybe the least annoying I found him in an episode. So there's that. Again, I don't necessarily blame Mr. Barbosa for doing what's asked of him, but His performance as Bucky has never been a favorite of mine and ours. I think it's fair to say, but I mean, it's a lot of him. Him never, he never cracks. There's never a moment where he seemingly considers giving up Zeta and Ro. And so you do see maybe some character growth, even though it's under all of this bravado and tough guy and quips and everything. There is this, like, you get this streak of like, okay, this guy's turned a corner. He is kind of, determined to help them from here on out. So there's his back and forth with Agent Bennett, as you said. Maybe if we'd gotten more of it, it would have been more enjoyable. But yeah, I think this is the faintest of praise for a character and a voice performance I don't love, but I think Mr. Barbosa does fine as Bucky in this episode.
He's okay. I think he's good, or not good. He's okay in spurts. When he has to give long form dialogue is when I feel like the cracks in the armor show a little bit. Because he's not just sort of able to give a one line with a little, quip or something like that. When he has to actually kind of put long form string sentences together, I think that's a weakness. And unfortunately for this episode, he has a lot of sentences he has to string together that ultimately, to me, sound like he's just reading from a script. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the script played to his strengths this week. So, unfortunately, he was a bit of a detriment in my view, but certainly has gotten better. He's gotten better since the Boy Genius episode and some of the other episodes that we've seen, but still very obvious to me that there's something left on the table here when it comes to his performances.
Agreed. And then, of course, once again, we have our two heroes, Diedrich Bader as Zeta and Julie Nathanson as Ro. They do a solid job. It's a lot of like Julie Nathan's yelling a lot in this episode because she's falling out of planes and almost crashing every 5 seconds. I do think she has a great line when it looks like the ship is going down at the end after the EMP and Bucky tries to say something. She just goes, "Nope, I will not let your voice be the last thing I hear before I die." And I thought that was really funny. So I think she's got some good digs in. But yeah, they're not. It's really an Agent Bennett Bucky episode, so they're kind of background players once again, but they do a solid job.
Yeah, again, this is mainly Bucky's episode, and with a little bit of Kurtwood Smith's Agent Bennett sprinkled in here. And Ro really gets more at the end. We do get that heart-to-heart at the end where I feel like she gets to really show off a lot of her range and emotion. I like that Zeta calls out the fact that she's softening a little bit on Bucky too. So there's some good play there from Diedrich Bader. So not a ton for them to do, but where they show up, it's certainly felt, especially maybe in some of the areas where some of the other actors or actor lets us a little bit down. So for all those reasons, I ended up giving a score, unfortunately, because of a lot of it landing on Mr. Barbosa's shoulders. I ended up giving voice acting a 4 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, and I guess, like I said, I was a little bit more charitable, so I gave it another 5 out of 10 for my voice acting score here. I think everyone's all right. It's not the most exciting episode, but like I said, there's some stakes, and we get a little bit moving on. And as I said, the lowest of praise, perhaps it was the least annoying I've ever found Bucky in an episode that he featured in heavily. So. For I guess that's it's the faintest of praise, but for Zeta, a bunch of 5s and 4s isn't really as bad as it can get, as we well know.
That's right. We actually had 2 episodes here, and we ended up with 3 19s and a 20. So that tells you how things go. So yeah, my final score is 19 out of 40, and if my math is correct, you have the same exact score.
Correct. Yeah, we lined up on this one.
As far as rewatchability is concerned, now I get to do it to you. I think this is, you're watching Zeta. This is the conclusion. It is the final episode. You can pop the champagne now that Bucky appears. So he will not be in the final 3 episodes that we review here. So he goes away to visit that uncle and is never heard from again, I guess. So he's off the grid, but it's a resolution to a pretty important character that seems to show up multiple times here. So I dare say that this gets 1 thumb up when it comes to the Zeta Project importance.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't like it. I don't like an episode featuring this much Bucky to be integral to any show, even the Zeta Project. But yeah, I think unfortunately you're right. This is his send off. Heaven knows what would have happened if we had been cursed with yet another season of the Zeta Project. But yeah, we get to say bon voyage and good riddance. And as far as I'm concerned, that subway car blew up 2 seconds after it pulled away.
We'll leave it at that. That's the best way that we can put a pin in this. But we will begin to wrap things up here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As we always say when we do these, the tongue is planted firmly in the cheek as we do these, for the most part. Of course, we amp things up for the entertainment value, but we appreciate if you do tune in. We know that this series doesn't quite have the nostalgia feels as the rest of the DCAU may for you. Maybe you are. Maybe you are a Zeta fanatic. Maybe one of the dozen that exist. If you are and you like the Zeta Project, more power to you. Let us know. You can do so in a couple of different ways. You can follow us on social media at DCAU Review. Send us your thoughts there. We're on all of the platforms. Send us on the big 2 are the ones that we use most often, Twitter X and Instagram. Get us there. Let us know you're a huge fan of Zeta Project content. And if you support with your wallet and support the podcast, then maybe we'll do a entire season Zeta Project omnibus one day. Not promising anything anytime soon. But if you're a supporter and you say, hey, I want that omnibus, then it sways things a little bit. Just saying. You can support us, of course, over at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. You can also check out the show notes where we have links to all of our social media as well as our YouTube page. Check that out. If you're listening there, do us a favor, like this video, even if you don't like the Zeta Project, like this video, subscribe to us, hit the bell, do all the things that all the YouTube channels annoyingly tell you to do every single time that they remind you. It does help. There's a reason why everybody says it. It helps the algorithm. We're looking to build our following there on YouTube. So even if you don't listen on YouTube, head on over there and do all the things, please. You can also, of course, subscribe to us on whatever podcast app you listen to, whether that's Apple Podcast or Spotify. Those, of course, are the big 2 or one of those other ancillary ones. If you listen to us there, give us a 5-star review. Let us know that you're listening. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you leave that 5-star review, that helps us out so much. We're willing to send you a thank you gift if you live here in the U.S. So leave us a 5-star review with a little blurb there. We'll send you a thank you. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a 5-star review. You can comment on our episodes if you liked this, if you got a thought on either of these 2 episodes, a memory, something. Maybe you want to argue with us over the relevancy of these episodes and how important they are to the DCAU as a whole. Do so in the comment section, please. As we said, you can also check out the show notes for our link to our store. You can also check out the new design for DCAUreview.com. Perhaps that's where you listen to your new episodes every single week. Newly designed, fresh coat of paint on that DCAUreview.com. Head over there today if you have not checked it out. And then Liam, we will, of course, be heading back to the future as we head back to Batman Beyond for next week as we wrap up the exciting conclusion of the debut episode Rebirth with Rebirth Part 2. We get some good, exciting things here. We left things off with quite a bit of a cliffhanger as Terry has some evidence about the potential murder of his father that he's brought to Bruce Wayne for help. And we learn next week some exciting things happening here with what happens when Bruce gets involved, or does he get involved?
Absolutely excited to deep dive that. Got some nice feedback on reviewing part 1. deep diving it like never before, and look forward to doing the same as we finally get to see Terry suit up for the second time because we watched it before. But you know what I mean. It'll be fun to talk about that one in much more depth than we ever have before next week with Rebirth Part 2.
Can't wait. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.